My mother, Doris, was magic. She absolutely perfected the art of making every day, every ordinary moment a celebration. When a warm summer rain would roll through, she'd send my brother and sister and me out in our swimsuits to play in mud puddles. When I was obsessed with my Cabbage Fetch kid in 1983, she took it to Sears to have its baby pictures taken. She made the best Halloween costumes. Magic. My father once told me that when she was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 34, she just couldn't imagine anything but a happy ending. Idyllic, for sure. But what that meant for me, the youngest of her 3 children, is that I never once had a conversation with her about being sick. I learned every single thing I knew of her cancer from my older brother and sister, who were anything but equipped to help me navigate such rough terrain. In the early hours of a cool August morning, just 3 days after I turned 12 years old, my father woke me up with 4 life-changing words: "Your mother is gone." A single defining moment with a clearly delineated before and after. Maybe you've had one of these moments in your life too. A push into the ocean during an unrelenting storm, a storm called grief. Grief, it's such a small word for such a big experience. One thing I've learned since that day 37 years ago is that grief is to feel, not fix. Now let's be clear. Although the rates of childhood bereavement are shockingly high, in fact, 1 in 12 kids in the United States will have a parent or a sibling die before they turn 18. The reality is, most of you probably didn't have a parent die when you were a kid. For those of you who are in the club with me, though, I see you. But there are many losses in life that we grieve. Divorce or a relationship ending, having to say goodbye to a beloved pet, job transitions, and one of your kids breaks your heart. Finally giving up on your favorite pair of jeans ever fitting you again. Funny, not funny, right? And grief is a natural, normal, healthy response to loss of any kind. There is simply nothing wrong with you because you are grieving. Unfortunately, others will tell you differently. We are in the midst of a time when many are pathologizing grief. For the first time in history, the official diagnostic manual used by mental health professionals now includes grief. Prolonged grief disorder, to be exact. In the past, intense and life-altering reactions to loss were seen as a normal, natural part of the grieving process, not a mental disorder. Now, children can be diagnosed with prolonged grief disorder if they are yearning too deeply for their parent who died just 6 months after their death. Let that sink in. And right now, studies are being done to test naltrexone, a drug used to treat opioid addiction, on grief. The hypothesis? Those who are grieving are addicted to the memory of the person who died. As if memories are a bad thing, as if grief is something to be fixed, something to be cured, something to move on from in an appropriate time frame. Appropriate for whom, I ask. But grief is not a 6-week program. Heck, it isn't even a 6-month program. Grief is a lifelong journey. Because grief isn't just one thing, it isn't just sadness, not one emotion. Grief can also be relief, fear, gratitude, shock, hope, anxiety, pride, love, guilt, and so many other feelings. Grief is a complex experience. It is a physical, behavioral, social, spiritual, emotional, and cognitive experience. Grief is messy because being human is messy. Grief is complicated because relationships are complicated. Grief is deep because we are deep. And even though there is no rushing it or fixing it, people will still try. In the aftermath of my mother's death, my father jumped quickly into trying to fill the void with the next relationship. My brother and sister, being a bit older, were more easily able to escape the chaos. And after a handful of months, I was home pretty much alone for quite some time. My best friend's mom tried to help out where she could, bringing over groceries when the cupboards were bare, trying to teach me to cook a few things for myself. But honestly, most of the adults in my life just didn't know what to do, except to try to fix my grief. These very well-intentioned people wanted to take my pain away by saying things like, "Your mom wouldn't want you to be sad," or "Your mom was such an incredible person, you have to live on in her memory." But no pressure, right? There is truly no shortage of cliches or platitudes or downright hurtful things people offer to those who are grieving. Pro tip: avoid any sentence that starts with "at least." At least they didn't suffer. At least you're young and can fall in love again. At least you can have another child. People really say these things, and just no. For me, it wasn't just other people, it was my dad too. I distinctly remember standing in the kitchen one evening. He came home to pack more clothes before heading out for the night again. And I felt so alone and so mad and so sad that I just let him have it. And he kept repeating, "You're fine, it's fine, you're going to be fine," as if to convince himself as much as me. And I remember saying, "What if I'm not?" And that is when he said, "I heard about this place called the Dougie Center. I have no idea what they do. Do you want to go?" And I said yes. I knew I needed more help than what I was getting. The center was the world's first peer support program for children and families who are grieving, started right here in Portland in 1982. Getting to go to a peer support group was the single most helpful thing that happened in my life after my mother's death. There, no one tried to fix me. In addition to being with other kids my age who also had a parent die, I was surrounded by adults who said things like, "That sounds really hard. Do you want to tell me more about it?" Or, "I remember you saying your mom made amazing Halloween costumes. What would you have her make you this year if she could?" Things that made me feel validated and seen. Things that held the space for my entire grief experience without expectation that I forget or move on. Things that gave me the space and the opportunity to feel it. And there are very tangible reasons that this is so important. Kids who have a parent die in childhood have higher levels of anxiety, depression, and substance misuse into adulthood. They have even been shown to have earlier mortality rates than those who never experienced the circumstances of a death far too young. But there is good news. Dougie Center's peer support groups, as evidenced through 2 randomized control trials on our LIGHT program, have been shown to significantly increase hopefulness, social support, self-worth, and perceived problems become better and more bearable for our participants. So, what does this look like? In peer support, we sit beside people in their darkest moments, and we share our darkness in return. When we can allow for and validate the sorrow, the injustice, the pain, the longing, when we can hold the space for the immenseness of grief, there becomes just a little more room, a little less pressure. A window cracks and lets in a bit of air. And over time, there becomes space. Space for connection, space for creating meaning, space to hold on to the love, creating strength, and creating a shared understanding that when hard things happen, we are not alone in this world. So how can you offer this support to those in your life who are grieving? Share your favorite memories often. Sit beside them without trying to fix it long after the casseroles have stopped arriving. Put important dates on your calendar. Send a text or a card every year saying that you haven't forgotten and memories live on. Say the name of the person who died. As important as community can be, not everyone will seek out peer support, and grief can be a really isolating experience. So showing up for yourself can be equally as important. The reality is, you may place expectations on yourself that aren't helpful or kind either. I should be over this by now, or I'm not doing this right. So how do we show up for ourselves in the midst and aftermath of tremendous loss? There's no right way to grieve, but here's one idea. What if feeling your grief instead of fixing your grief means you get to keep loving? Loss, change, death doesn't end the love. We all have the capacity, we all have the right to keep loving. My mother is the only mother I'm ever going to have. Her physical absence doesn't end our relationship, it only changes it. I get to still think about my mom, still cry and laugh about my mom, share stories about my mom, stay connected to my mom. And so do you. You get to stay connected to the people and experiences that have shaped you. You get to hold on to those. You get to bring them with you. With kids, I describe grief as something I always carry with me. At times, it feels like a huge boulder on my chest, but most of the time, it's a pebble that I carry in my pocket. But it is always with me, and that is okay. I don't want to forget about my mom. So if that means I carry my love and grief with me forever, I'm okay with that. A second thing you may consider for yourself over time is how to create purpose or meaning out of your loss and grief experiences. I want to be super careful here because this isn't a prescription to give others. And this is very, very different from the harmful cliche, everything happens for a reason, that can dismiss and diminish real pain. Creating meaning isn't finding a reason. It's leaning into our own internal accountability for how we heal and grow. For some, creating meaning centers around acts of service. For others, it is found through advocacy, honoring the person's memory, supporting others, or creativity. Let me be clear. It will never be okay that my mom died at 36 years old. In fact, there truly isn't much I wouldn't do for just 5 minutes with my mom. One hug, to hear her tell me she loves my face one more time. She didn't get to see me grow up, meet my husband or my family, or witness my current midlife crisis. And we both really missed out on a lot. But how I've created meaning for myself is by being entirely grateful for the gifts that have come into my life because my mother lived and because my mother died. I'm a strong person because of her life and a much stronger person because of her death. I love harder. I don't take anything for granted because I know tomorrow is not guaranteed. I try to keep my relationships clean, and I don't give up on people as easily. All of that is a direct result of loving my mother in her life and in her death. Permission. Permission. Permission to keep loving, and perhaps, if it is helpful for you over time, create meaning. I learned about the brevity and beauty of life 3 days after my 12th birthday. Perhaps you learned these lessons in your childhood as well, perhaps in your 20s, maybe you're in the midst of learning them right now. Remember, grief is normal. It is a natural and healthy response to loss of any kind. Together, let's normalize grief. You do not need to disconnect it from hope, transformation, or love. It can be helpful to grieve with others, to give ourselves and each other permission to show up fully. There's tremendous power in community, in being present. So send the text, share the memory, say the name of the person who died. And remember to be gentle with yourself. We carry those we love with us. Their impact, their love, their lessons, they stay. And we get to keep loving, because grief is to feel, not fix.